Nothing could have prepared Jessica for what came next.
Jessica, I see you finally realized that you're nothing special.
She was stunned.
I must have drank a little too much.
She stammered in reply.
Can you help me get a room? I need to rest. I'm never going to drink again.
She remembered that Damon didn't like it when she drank, so she tried her best to act in a sophisticated manner, despite the circumstances. Damon nodded in agreement and led her to the reception, which was across the street from the hotel's dining room. Jessica leaned on his shoulder. She sniffled and said,
Damon, you're so considerate. Let's get back together.
Yeah, right. Would you be saying that if I was poor? I'm only doing this for you because you're such a mess.
Damon thought. When they reached the street, they had to stand at the crosswalk for a few moments and wait for the traffic to stop. While they were waiting, a car drove up to the lights and slowed down. It was Abigail. As the lights changed, Abigail started to drive away, but then she saw Damon and Jessica. When she noticed that Damon had his arm around Jessica's waist, she was furious. She immediately took out her phone, videoed the couple, and sent the footage to Tiffany. Tiffany had been feeling down for a few days, and she had barely left the house. All she really had to look forward to was Abigail and their texts and chats. But when she opened the clip that Abigail had sent her, her heart sank. She let out a long sigh and tried to pretend that she didn't care.
Don't send me anything about that douchebag again. I don't want anything more to do with him.
Tiffany wrote in her text to Abigail. Abigail smiled wryly and replied,
You didn't believe me when I told you he was a player. Do you believe me now?
Abigail was still waiting at the traffic lights, even though they had changed to green. People behind her started honking their horns in frustration. She was too angry to move, and she didn't care how irritated the other drivers became.
I'm watching TV. I don't care about Damon.
Tiffany wrote. Abigail replied back immediately.
Stop pretending you don't care. You're not convincing anyone. I'll find you a new man, a much better one, and I'll make sure everyone in Hillwood knows about it. It'll happen before you know it. If you say no, I'll stop being your friend.
Okay, there are probably better ones out there. Let's talk tomorrow.
Tiffany put her phone under her pillow and tried to sleep after replying to Abigail, but sleep took a long time to come. When Damon and Jessica got to the hotel room, she threw herself down on the bed and stared at him alluringly. Damon understood that she was trying to seduce him. In the past, he had dreamed of such scenarios, but those days had gone. He knew that she had done the same to many men, and that knowledge extinguished any interest he may have had. Jessica reached out and touched his hand.
I know you're angry and probably can't forgive me, but we can still be friends, right?
Damon didn't react, but Jessica didn't care. She started to undress right in front of him. His eyes widened, and he found he couldn't speak. She took everything off and stood in front of him completely naked.
Do you think I'm beautiful?
She whispered in his ear. Damon twitched slightly.
Yes, I think you're beautiful.
Then let's have some fun tonight.
Jessica said playfully. She started undressing Damon. He took a deep breath. He was rich, but he wasn't experienced in matters of the bedroom. He found he was powerless to resist, so just let himself go with the flow. Damon and Jessica had never slept with each other, but that night he felt ready. After all, he had nothing to lose. But then, in the middle of everything, Jessica froze.
What's wrong?
Damon asked. She started crying while looking at him through her tear-filled eyes.
Jessica, tell me what happened.
Oh, Damon, earlier on the manager sent me a text saying that they'll take the cost of the bottle of wine I broke out of my salary.
Damon nodded and replied.
Seems fair enough.
Jessica said nothing.
Are you being deliberately stupid? Why don't you offer to pay for the cost of the wine?
She thought.
Do you think you'd be able to give me the money for it? I'll get it back to you when I have it.
How much is it?
Damon didn't know the price of anything in that restaurant. He had let Gabriella order for him, so he hadn't even looked at the menu.
Around $300.
Damon was surprised. He knew that her family hadn't been overly generous with her in the past, but he hadn't expected her to be in quite such a predicament over such a small sum of money.
How about this? I'll pay for the wine if you let me be with you tonight.
Jessica was astonished at his suggestion. Noah had wanted her to get close to Damon in order to cheat him out of some money, but she felt she couldn't keep up the pretense any longer.
What are you saying exactly? If you have something to say, just say it.
Okay then, I'll get straight to the point. Do you remember how much the wine cost exactly?
$388.
You seem to have sobered up quickly.
He snapped.
And how much do you think you're worth?
What do you mean?
Jessica was getting angry.
Do you think I'm some kind of sex worker?
He shook his head.
I'm sorry, but I don't think you're worth the $300. I'd like you to leave now. There are plenty of other women I can spend time with who won't just be after me for my money, and most of them are a lot nicer than you.
Jessica stopped playing drunk. She looked at him quietly, irritated that her plot had failed.
Damon Hemsworth, why don't you want to help me? I know you've got plenty of money.
Blinded by her disappointment, Jessica was making a fool of herself. Damon was rich, but he wasn't stupid, and he knew better than to give any of his money to Jessica. After all, she had taken enough from him when they had been together.
I'm afraid I've suddenly become poor and I can't pay for the wine. Goodbye.
Damon didn't want to waste his time on her any longer. He stood up, ready to leave. Jessica smirked.
If you don't hand over that money right now, I'll find a way to make you give it to me. Think of it like our breakup fee.
It had been Jessica who had dumped Damon in the first place, but she still wanted money from him.
She has thicker skin than an elephant,
he thought.
I've had worse threats than that.
He said with a shrug. She finally gave in to her anger.
You can come in now.
She called through the door.
I've given him enough chances.
The door opened, and Noah stepped in. Noah had been furious with Damon when they had parted at the bar. He had sworn to teach him such a harsh lesson that he would never bully him again. Over the past few days, he had made an effort to find out more and more about Damon, and the more he knew, the more he understood just how filthy rich he was.
He's been pretending to be poor the whole time,
Noah thought. He struggled to comprehend just how much money Damon had.
Damon Hemsworth, I really didn't have you down as a sex pest. Jessica doesn't want to sleep with you. You shouldn't try to force her. If this reaches the university, you'll be expelled for sure. Think what that would do to your parents. I'm considering calling the police right away. Did you know that my uncle's a senior officer in the local police department? Or maybe I'll give you a chance to convince me not to mention it to him. You've got plenty of money to share.
Damon smiled.
So, this little night of acting was all about playing silly games.